Sabers against steel. The Polish cavalry charge that destroyed a Mythe. On September 1st, 1939, 19:00 hours. The horses smell the Germans before Colonel Kazimierz Mastalerz sees them. Through the pine forest near Krojanty, 250 meters ahead, a full German infantry battalion sits in a clearing. They're resting, helmets off, rifles stacked, canteens passed around. They think they're safe this deep in the Tukola forest, 4 miles from Chojnice, far from Polish defensive lines that are already collapsing under the weight of the German invasion. Mastalerz is 52 years old. He fought for Austria-Hungary in the First World War, battled Bolsheviks in 1920, and he knows exactly what's about to happen. His adjutant suggests attacking dismounted safer, more controlled. The colonel's response is immediate. "Young man, I am quite aware what it is like to carry out an impossible order. The 18th Pomeranian Uhlan Regiment has been ordered to delay the German 20th Motorized Division long enough for Polish rifle battalions to withdraw from Chojnice. Every minute matters. There's no time to dismount, no time to set up firing positions. The Germans are exposed, unprepared, perfect targets for the one tactic that might work shock." At 1900 hours, Mastalerz gives the order. 2 squadrons mount. The Sable WZ 1934 cavalry sabers slide from their scabbards with a metallic whisper that's been the same for 3 centuries. Commander Eugeniusz Świeszczak raises his blade. The forest explodes with the thunder of hooves. The Polish cavalry bursts from the tree line at full gallop, sabers flashing in the evening light. The German infantry doesn't have time to grab their rifles. They scatter like autumn leaves, running for cover that doesn't exist, abandoning equipment helmets flying. The Poles occupy the clearing in under 2 minutes. It's a textbook cavalry action, the kind military academies study, where surprise and speed overcome superior numbers. Then the armored cars appear. German Leichter Panzerspähwagen. Reconnaissance vehicles emerge from a forest road, their MG-34 machine guns opening fire at point-blank range. The Poles are completely exposed in the open clearing. Horses scream and fall. Riders tumble from their mounts. Commander Świeszczak goes down, cut in half by machine gun fire. Mastalerz spurs his horse forward, trying to reach him, trying to save him. The machine guns find Mastalerz too. 20 to 25 Polish cavalrymen die in the clearing. The survivors gallop for cover behind a nearby hillock, dragging wounded comrades, abandoning dead horses. But the mission succeeds. The German advance stops for the day. The 1st Rifle Battalion and National Defense Battalion Chersk withdraw safely from Chojnice. Hours pass before the Germans reorganize and continue their attack. On September 2nd, General Stanisław Grzmot-Skotnicki decorates the 18th Pomeranian Uhlans with his personal Virtuti Militari Medal, Poland's highest military honor equivalent to the Medal of Honor, for valor, for buying time with blood. That same day, German war correspondents arrive at Krojanty. With them are 2 Italian journalists invited to document the battlefield. The correspondents are shown the corpses of Polish cavalrymen, the dead horses, the sabers scattered in the grass. And parked nearby purely by chance, having arrived after the battle ended, are German Panzer tanks. Italian correspondent Indro Montanelli files his dispatch that evening. He writes about the incredible bravery of Polish soldiers who charged German tanks with sabers and lances. It's an honest mistake. He saw dead cavalry. He saw German tanks. He connected 2 things that never touched. A legend is born. And unlike the Polish cavalrymen at Krojanty, this legend will prove impossible to kill. What the world forgot, what Nazi propagandists deliberately erased, is that Polish cavalry in 1939 were modern soldiers with modern weapons. Yes, they carried sabers. They also carried rifles, machine guns, and weapons specifically designed to kill tanks. Each Polish cavalry brigade fielded 78 Karabin Przeciw Pancerny, was M35 anti-tank rifles. These weren't museum pieces. They were classified weapons so advanced that the Polish government shipped them in crates marked measuring equipment until weeks before the war. Soldiers training on them swore oaths of secrecy. The WZ-35 fired tungsten carbide core bullets at over 4,000 feet per second. It could penetrate any German tank's armor in 1939 at 300 meters. When the Germans captured these rifles after Poland's defeat, they were so impressed they immediately designated them Panzer Buchse 35 and used them throughout the war. They sold 800 captured Polish rifles to Italy. Polish cavalry brigades also deployed Swedish-made Bofors 37mm anti-tank guns, among the best in the world. They had 75mm artillery. They had machine guns. They had TKS and TK3 tankettes, small armored vehicles with tracks and machine guns. A Polish cavalry brigade in 1939 wasn't a medieval throwback. It was mobile infantry that used horses for transportation. Doctrine was explicit cavalry rides to battle, dismounts fights as infantry using modern weapons. As one Polish trooper recalled, "When we heard sounds of battle, we were ordered to dismount. Quickly, horses were moved to the rear. They were for transport, not for fighting tanks." Every major army in 1939 used horses extensively. Germany pressed 2.75 million horses into service during the war. At the invasion of Poland, the Wehrmacht had 885,000 horses. The idea that only backward Poland relied on cavalry is propaganda. Polish cavalry doctrine explicitly addressed engaging armored vehicles, use terrain for ambushes, attack at night, hit tanks from flanks or rear-use anti-tank weapons from concealed positions, target tracks and vision slits. Never charge frontally across open ground in daylight, which is exactly what they never did. On September 1st, 1939, Battle of Mokra, 126 miles southwest of Krojanty, another battle unfolds the same day. This one the world never hears about. The German 4th Panzer Division advances toward the village of Mokra with approximately 100 tanks. Opposing them, the Wawinska Cavalry Brigade under Colonel Julian Filipovich, supported by the armored train Śmiały, the Daring One. The Poles have prepared defensive positions in forested terrain with excellent fields of fire. When German tanks roll toward Mokra after a short artillery barrage, they're met at 150 meters by perfectly positioned Bofors anti-tank guns. 2 Panzers explode immediately. The German tanks withdraw to 400 meters and try shelling Polish positions. 2 more tanks are knocked out. The German armor retreats, leaving their supporting infantry exposed on flat, open ground with zero cover. Polish cavalry riding not charging sweep around the flanks and attack the unsupported German infantry. The Germans panic. They flee. Some are captured. The Germans regroup with air support. They push into Polish positions. Things look desperate. Then Śmiały rolls up and opens fire from 2.5 kilometers away, beyond the effective range of any German tank gun in 1939. The armored train systematically destroys multiple panzers, while German tankers watch helplessly. During confused street fighting in smoke-filled Mokra Polish tankettes, and a cavalry squadron under Captain Jerzy Holek accidentally drives straight into the middle of a German tank column. Pure chaos, pure chance. But the Germans are so disoriented that the Polish units break through with minimal losses, seize a forest position, and force the German tanks to withdraw from Mokra entirely. The German 4th Panzer Division loses over 100 armored vehicles at Mokra, including at least 50 tanks. General Gerd von Rundstedt, commander of Army Group South, writes in his after-action report, "The Polish cavalry attacked heroically. In general, the bravery and heroism of the Polish army merits great respect." Even Heinz Guderian, architect of blitzkrieg warfare, is shaken. When his 2nd Motorized Infantry Division reports its withdrawing because of Polish cavalry pressure, Guderian writes in his memoirs, "I was speechless for a moment. When I regained the use of my voice, I asked the divisional commander if he had ever heard of Pomeranian grenadiers being broken by hostile cavalry. The answer is yes, it happens. Polish cavalry breaks German units, including armored units, repeatedly throughout September 1939. During the September campaign, Polish cavalry executes at least 16 confirmed charges. Not suicidal charges against tanks, charges against exposed infantry, charges to break encirclements, charges to cover retreating units. Most succeed. September 1st, Janów. A squadron of the 11th Ulan Regiment charges a German cavalry unit and drives them from the field. 30 Polish casualties, 40 German casualties. September 2nd, Borowa. The 19th Ulan Regiment charges another German cavalry squadron which retreats without accepting battle. September 11th, Sari Forest. When the 20th Ulan Regiment is surrounded and being destroyed, Lieutenant Jan Bertau's squadron charges through the siege lines, breaks out, escapes to rejoin friendly forces. September 15th, Battle of Bazura. The 17th Ulan Regiment is ordered to establish a bridgehead across the Bazura River. Several squadrons charge German infantry positions, reach them. Dismount, fight on foot. The bridgehead is secured. September 19th, Campinos Forest. About 1,000 riders from the 14th and 9th Ulan Regiments retreat toward Warsaw with remnants of the Poznan and Pomerania armies. German forces, 2,300 infantry, 40 tanks from the 1st Panzer Division artillery cavalry block their path at Wolka Węglowa. The Polish cavalry charges. They break through. They reach Warsaw. September 23rd, Krasnobrud. The 1st Squadron of the 25th. Wielkopolska Ulan Regiment charges and retakes a town despite heavy opposition. They defeat a German cavalry countercharge, capture the high ground, seize the headquarters, take about 100 prisoners. September 24th. Husin, a reserve squadron reinforced by mounted police charges Soviet infantry, because by then the Soviets have invaded from the east. The charge routs the Soviet infantry before being stopped by Soviet tanks. The last documented cavalry charge occurs September 26th at Morance. The 27th Ulan Regiment charges twice against an entrenched German infantry battalion. Both charges are repelled with heavy casualties. After the second charge, the Germans send out a soldier carrying a white flag. After negotiations, the Germans withdraw from the village. The Poles charged twice, lost heavily both times, and the Germans withdrew anyway. A German soldier from the 67th Tank Battalion writes in his diary, "We have been fighting for 2 hours. We see anti-tank rifles, their fire puts holes in our armor. We squeeze the triggers of our machine guns without rest, and see men and horses fall in the spray of fire. Polish cavalry terrifies German forces. They hit supply columns, ambush isolated units appear where they're not expected. They use exactly the tactics that modern cavalry doctrine prescribed. But none of that matters to the propagandists. Nazi propaganda seizes the Krojanty incident with calculated precision. Here is proof, visual, visceral proof, that Germans are modern and Poles are primitive. The master race has technology, while the Slavic Untermenschen have only desperate courage and obsolete weapons. Never mind the charge was against infantry. Never mind armored cars, not tanks, killed the cavalrymen. Never mind German forces also use cavalry extensively. The image is too perfect to let facts interfere. German publications run photos of Polish cavalry in their strange, outmoded, and pathetic uniforms, photos that are actually reenactments of the November uprising of 1830. In 1941, German propagandists produce a film reel called Geschwader Lützow, with staged footage of Polish cavalry charging tanks. Pure fiction, shown widely. Heinz Guderian's memoirs claim the Pomeranian Brigade charged German tanks with swords and lances. False Guderian wasn't at Krojanty, but it enters the historical record. Even Günter Grass, who wins the Nobel Prize for Literature, falls for the myth. In The Tin Drum, he writes, "Oh, insane cavalry picking blueberries on horseback, with wimpled lances, red and white, squadrons of melancholy and tradition." After the war, the Soviets enthusiastically promote the myth. It fits their narrative. Polish aristocratic cavalry officers clinging to tradition led peasant soldiers to pointless deaths because they were too stupid to understand modern warfare. According to Soviet propaganda, this demonstrates why Poland needs enlightened socialist leadership. The myth spreads through Western media. It's dramatic, it's visual. It requires no nuanced understanding of military tactics. Brave but foolish Poles charging unstoppable German war machines, perfect story for a world trying to understand how Poland fell so quickly. By the 1990s, the myth is taught in schools. In 2009, The Guardian publishes an editorial referring to Polish lancers turning their horses to face Hitler's Panzers as an example of romantic but idiotic military action. The Polish embassy in London demands a correction. 2 weeks later, The Guardian publishes a grudging admission. This article repeated a myth of the Second World War fostered by Nazi propagandists. There is no evidence that this occurred. The correction changes nothing. In 2017, a financial analyst on CNBC compares Macy's department store to the Polish army in World War II. It tried to field cavalry against German tanks, and it did not end well. The Polish embassy in Washington issues an angry statement. Not once in 1939 did the Polish army deploy cavalry against German tanks. This is pure Nazi and communist propaganda that continues to weave its way into Western media reports to this very day. The truth doesn't matter. The image is too powerful. Poland falls in 36 days because it's attacked simultaneously by two of the most powerful military forces on Earth. Germany invades from the west with 1.5 million men, 2,500 tanks, 2,000 aircraft. On September 17th, the Soviet Union invades from the east with 800,000 troops, 4,000 tanks, 3,000 aircraft. Poland fights on two fronts against enemies that collectively outnumber it 4-1. Poland's defensive strategy is fundamentally flawed. Political considerations force the Polish High Command to defend the entire western border rather than retreating to defensible river positions. Polish forces spread thin, vulnerable to encirclement. When Germans break through in multiple places simultaneously, Polish units become isolated, surrounded. The speed of the German advance is unprecedented. This is blitzkrieg in its first large-scale application. Armored spearheads punch through defensive lines, drive deep into rear areas, encircle defending forces before they can retreat. Poland lacks air superiority. The Luftwaffe destroys or grounds much of the Polish Air Force in the first days. Without air cover, Polish ground forces endure constant bombing and strafing. Polish tank forces are inadequate. Poland has about 600 tanks, but most are tiny tankettes with only machine guns. Germany has 2,500 tanks with cannons and real armor. Communication breaks down rapidly. As units become isolated, as headquarters are overrun, as telephone lines are cut, the Polish command structure collapses. Individual units fight bravely, but without coordination. Then the Soviets invade. Any hope of establishing defensive lines in the east evaporates when the Red Army crosses the border. Poland isn't being defeated. It's being partitioned, carved between two totalitarian powers who secretly agreed to destroy it. Polish cavalry fights throughout the campaign. They take heavy casualties, the 9th. Uhlans suffer a 40% casualty rate, but they perform their role, screening advancing forces, covering withdrawals, filling gaps, launching counterattacks. The problem isn't that Polish cavalry is obsolete. The problem is Poland faces impossible odds against enemies with more of everything, more men, more tanks, more planes, better strategic position, and a secret alliance guaranteeing Poland will be crushed from both sides. The myth of Polish cavalry charging tanks has consequences that echo 85 years later. It's used to mock Polish military competence. It's deployed as metaphor for futile resistance, for clinging to tradition in the face of modernity, for being too stupid to recognize reality. Every time someone uses Polish cavalry versus German tanks as shorthand for hopeless obsolescence, they perpetuate Nazi propaganda. They spread a lie created by Joseph Goebbels' ministry to dehumanize Poles and justify German aggression. The real story is more complex. Polish cavalry in 1939 represented pragmatic adaptation to Poland's strategic situation. The country couldn't afford full motorization. Horses provided mobility and logistics that Poland's limited industrial base couldn't replace with trucks and tanks. Polish military planners developed doctrine using cavalry intelligently as mobile reserves, reconnaissance forces, mounted infantry that could quickly concentrate at threatened points. This doctrine worked. Polish cavalry repeatedly disrupted German operations. They delayed advances. They protected withdrawals. They inflicted casualties. They forced German commanders to commit more forces than expected. But performing well in a losing war doesn't make headlines. Polish cavalry fought bravely and effectively in a strategically hopeless situation isn't memorable. Polish cavalry charged tanks with swords is unforgettable because its dramatic visual confirms assumptions about the futility of fighting technological superiority. On September 1, 1939, what remains? Colonel Kazimierz Mastalerz died leading a successful cavalry charge against German infantry near Krojanty. His attack achieved its objective, delaying the German advance, allowing Polish infantry to withdraw safely. He never charged a tank. He never ordered his men to charge a tank. The idea would have been absurd to him. He was a professional officer with decades of combat experience. But history doesn't remember him that way. History remembers a lie that Polish cavalry charged German tanks because they were too foolish or traditional to understand modern warfare. The actual Polish cavalrymen of 1939 deserve better. They fought with modern weapons against overwhelming odds. They achieved tactical successes even as their country was destroyed. They were brave, competent, ultimately doomed not because they charged tanks, but because their country was attacked by two superpowers simultaneously, and the world did nothing. On September 2nd, the day after Mastalerz died, General Grzmot Skotnicki decorated the 18th Pomeranian Ulan Regiment with his Virtuti Militari Medal, Poland's highest military honor. The Germans took Krojanty. They took all of Poland, but they never took the truth, even though their lie outlived everyone who fought there. Every time someone repeats the myth of Polish cavalry charging tanks, they give Nazi propagandists one more victory. And every time someone learns the real story that Polish cavalry fought intelligently, bravely, effectively with modern weapons in an impossible situation, that victory shrinks. 85 years later, the truth is still fighting. At Mokra, the Wawinska Cavalry Brigade held the German 4th Panzer Division for an entire day. They destroyed over 100 armored vehicles. They inflicted 1,200 casualties while suffering 500 of their own. They proved that Polish cavalry, properly equipped and positioned, could defeat German armor. At Krojanty, the 18th Pomeranian Uhlans charged exposed German infantry, scattered them, delayed the German advance for hours. They accomplished their mission. 25 men died buying time for thousands to escape. At 16 different battlefields across Poland in September 1939, Polish cavalry charged. Most of those charges succeeded. German infantry panicked. German units withdrew. German commanders requested permission to retreat before intense pressure of the cavalry. None of that matters to the myth. The myth only remembers Krojanty, and it remembers wrong. In 2009, The Guardian admitted its error. In 2017, the Polish embassy issued another correction. The corrections come regularly now, every few years, whenever someone repeats the lie. The corrections never stop the lie from spreading. Because the lie is simple and the truth is complicated, the lie fits in a headline. The truth requires understanding. Doctrine, tactics, strategic context, the difference between operational success and strategic defeat. The lie just requires a mental image of horses running at Panzers. Colonel Mastalerz knew what he was doing when he ordered that charge at Krojanty. He knew the risks. He knew the odds. He knew cavalry doctrine said to dismount and fight as infantry. He also knew there was no time that German infantry were exposed. That surprise was his only weapon, that men under his command would die. Young man, I am quite aware what it is like to carry out an impossible order. He charged German infantry, not tanks, infantry. The charge worked. The mission succeeded. The lie won anyway.